Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we're going to be checking out this 5-game MLB slate. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel a lot. Really do appreciate it a bunch. I'm also going to take just a minute here and put this in Discord. Make sure to check out the Discord links in the description. You got we got some cool people in there, and it has grown some over the years. So I would definitely like to get more people in there because we do talk a lot of the stuff that's going on day to day. Not only that, but I do update a lot of information as we get closer to slate, and so I think that tends to be very helpful. So let's get in there and check that out. With that said, just give me 1 minute here and I will get started on the slate. Um, this is an interesting slate because we have some uh, different things going today, but so let's go ahead and get into this one now. All right, so for this slate, we do feature a pretty good, uh, interesting slate here. We have some weather issues in this one. This Pittsburgh Washington game definitely has some issues, but it should be a playable game, though. Um, it's definitely risky. The Detroit New York Mets game is definitely the most questionable game of the slate. Last night they ended up postponing the game despite seemingly being able to play, so I don't know exactly why, but uh, if that's risky, I guess today because that could happen again. And then the Colorado Chicago Cubs game both also has some risk of not playing because of the weather. I do think that those three games, the Mets game is definitely the most likely to get postponed. I do think most of these games will play though, and I do also think that these are going to be pitching weather type games, so do keep that in mind as well. As for stacks today, we have basically four teams that are pretty stackable: the Dodgers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, Toronto, and Detroit. Now, Toronto and Detroit are kind of less than stellar, but they still have opportunity here to be pretty good. So, with that said, let's get into the plays we do like now. We have a pretty interesting slate for pitching. It's kind of rough to be honest, but we look at the games here, and we have this LA Dodger game, and they have Glass now pitching. It looks like for them. Now there was some question if it was going to be Glass now or somebody else, but it looks like it's going to be Glass now. And assuming he does draw the start, he played very well against St. Louis in the last game. He's facing the best matchup here on the slate. He's got the best earn run potential and the highest K rate. That gives us a lot of upside in this matchup. And so this is definitely a positive situation for him. I think the Dodgers will win this game. Even though it's going to be a tougher game from a batting perspective for the Dodgers, I think they're still a solid stack, and I think Glass now will get the win and have a really solid outing. The next guy that I do like here is going to be for Houston, and that's Javier. Now, I don't love him today because he definitely has some risk here. He did good in his first start against the Yankees with 6 strikeouts, but his strikeout rate for this game is a little bit lower. Not only that, but Toronto does have some guys that can get hits, and he doesn't have the lowest total run potential here. The strikeouts do give him some upside though, but he definitely carries a little bit more risk. So he's a contrarian off of Glass now, though he is a less expensive. He's still a little more expensive than I like for the price, and so I do keep that in mind here. Looking at Pittsburgh, I do like Mitch Keller a little bit here. Now he's a GPP play only. He really struggled in his first game against Miami. But he does have decent strikeout stuff sometimes. I think a 14 to 24 fantasy point game here is probably where he ends up landing. I do think he's overpriced though at $8,200. I wish he was $1,400 cheaper at this point. But this slate is kind of lackluster when it comes to pitching. So outside the top guy in Glass now, so Keller is in play, but he's squarely a GPP play. And I have two extreme GPP options, and that's both of the pitchers on the Mets Detroit game. This is gonna be a very pitch heavy matchup for the due to the weather, and so I think both of these guys have some contrarian upside. They're definitely risky though, but they're cheap, and so that does help a little bit. I mean, they're cheaper than other guys. They just have it has a low total for the game. Detroit does have a low end stack, but it's definitely risky, and so while that is the way it sets, I think that those guys are going to be kind of contrarian because they're not going to give up too many earned runs. The other thing you could do, and this is probably not the wisest thing to do this season, or this game, or this slate rather, is to go with Luke Little or uh, Ben Brown for the Cubs, who are going to be the Little will likely just pitch 1 inning. The key here is if he can pitch 1 inning and get 1 or 2 strikeouts, which would give him 7 fantasy points essentially. But get two. Excuse me. He needs 2 strikeouts, no hits or anything, and just get into the out of the inning. The problem is he won't pitch any beyond that, so he'd be a super cheap way to pay up for a lot of other positions. I might run a lineup like that, but I'm not going to run many, and it won't be my core lineup. As for Colorado, they're really avoidable today. I like the Cubs here, despite the fact it's going to be a tough game when it comes to the weather. So overall, that is what I have for the pitching. So again, Glass now, then Javier, then Mitch Keller, and then in an extreme case, Miz or Hauser, and then a Hail Mary call of using Luke Little as a 1 inning hit for that. Moving into our bats here, we'll start with our catchers. Now, catching has been kind of all over the place today. We have a lot of catchers that have a lot of upside on the slate, and so that is nice, but it's definitely going to make it so you can do a lot of different things. Yanier Diaz for Houston looks like the best play on the slate. He's got a great projection and a high. He's going to have pretty good ownership. He'll probably be pretty chalky, but there are two chalky plays on the slate, so uh, at this position, and he's just as good at the home runs as anybody. He's also one of the best hitters at catcher at this position on the slate. He's also started the season on fire with 476 average and 2 home runs. I like him a lot. But if you want to be contrarian, you can go down to Davis here for Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is going to be a popular stack today, and Henry Davis will definitely be a guy that will get in there to have some opportunity to have a good game here. He definitely carries a little bit more risk than Diaz, as he's been a little bit less consistent, but as you can see, he's had a pretty solid start to the season as well. So I think he's a viable option. His home run potential is almost as high, and if you want to stack up Pittsburgh, he's definitely a guy that I would try to stick in there. You could also look at Alejandro Kirk and Keibert Ruiz for Toronto and Washington, respectively, but those are both kind of contrarian plays. And of course, Will Smith is always in play, but he's pretty expensive on this particular slate, so I probably am going to avoid him for the most part. Looking at first baseman, Otani is obviously going to be in play every single time he plays. He has really not had one of those monster games yet this season, and he hasn't hit a home run yet, so you got to feel like he's going to be due soon. But he's definitely in play on the slate, though he is somewhat hard to roster at his price point. Vlad Jr. also looks very interesting today against Javier. Now, he definitely carries some risk, and he has also been a little bit rough the last few games, including the game where they got shut out. But I do think that he's going to have some opportunity to have a home run today, and so that's definitely somebody I would consider. Rowdy Tellez for Pittsburgh is a guy I really like in certain situations. I've liked him a lot in certain situations when he was with Milwaukee, and that's going to continue to play. That he fits in certain uh, random situation. It's not random, but it's just he fits in situations that we like, and so he's going to be a guy that I like today. He's got a good matchup and great metrics, and Pittsburgh is going to be a popular stack. He's going to be popular because he's dirt cheap at $2,800, and that definitely helps us pay up at other positions. Gallo here is also in play because he has home run potential in this game, though he definitely carries some risk in this one, and he's really struggled to start the season, and so that is a concern. He's had 6 strikeouts, but yeah, that's what he does. He's just a home run boomer bust kind of play, though he's more expensive than Tellez, so he's probably not worth too much of an effort there. But you could also look at Justin Turner and Cody Bellinger as options, but they're going to be somewhat hard to roster with their price points today. Looking at second baseman, we're going to start by looking at Mookie Betts. Mookie has been absolutely phenomenal so far. He's hitting home runs like crazy, and he's been scoring monster fantasy points. In fact, if you look at his stats, he's had one game under 10 fantasy points, which is a 0 against St. Louis, but this is a game where he's got good metrics and really good opportunity here. He's going to have a lot of upside in this matchup, and so he's going to be a core. He is what I would consider a core play. He's going to be hard to roster at that price point, but he is definitely a viable option here. So he looks like he just looks really good. Altuve looks a good alternative to him. He's a little bit cheaper, and he definitely has the upside as well. He started the season a little bit up and down, but he definitely has home run potential in this game, and so he's definitely worth a look in a positive matchup here. I also think that Louis Garcia for Washington. Um, it has some potential in this one. He has not started the season very well, but he has some upside in this matchup, and so he's definitely worth a look. And I think he's going to get some usage as well. And then Kevin Biggio, also for Toronto, has some utility on this slate. You could also look at Horner, but he's going to be hard to roster at his price point for the Cubs. Looking at third base, we are going to start with Ke'Bryan Hayes for Pittsburgh. Like I told you, Pittsburgh is going to be a popular stack today, and Ke'Bryan Hayes has been really solid to start the season. He's got really good metrics for this game, and he comes out as my top overall play at this position. I think he's going to be super popular, so he's going to be very easy to roster at his price point as well, which is definitely nice on the slate. With that said, you could option down to Justin Turner for Toronto, though that is a kind of a risky play against Javier if you decide to use Javier. But he's hit the ball really well so far this season. Even though he's had some goose eggs, he's got good upside in this matchup, and so he definitely has some utility here. Max Muncy and Bregman both have some upside, but they're definitely harder to roster at their price points. And for value plays, you could look at Kiner Falafel for Toronto or Lipscomb for Washington, as they both are having good potentials on this particular slate. Looking at shortstops, we do have a slate here with O'Neal Cruz being the top overall guy at this position. Obviously, he's pretty expensive now, but he absolutely hits the ball with tons of power. I do think that he's overpriced, and so he's not somebody that I think is a must play. Not only that, but you can also use Mookie Betts at this position as well, which I already talked about at second base. And I think the fact that you can use Mookie at multiple places definitely helps you in this slate. But if we look at other guys, Abrams for Washington is interesting today. He's been pretty good to start the season. He definitely has some good upside in this matchup, and so he's definitely worth a look. I also like uh, Chris Taylor for the Dodgers, as he's going to be nice and cheap. He can also play in the outfield. He has not started the season all that great, but he had one good game so far, and he has some good potential here. He's typically a guy similar to Talese that I like in certain situations, but he's often really cheap, and that helps you pay up for other positions, and so that's a nice thing to have. I don't think there's too much else at this position that I'd really jump off the page. You could consider Lindor and Bichette, but they both carry a lot of risk on this slate. So, moving into the outfielders, we have quite a few guys that we like today. Obviously, Pittsburgh is going to be a popular stack today, and Sawinski will be the top dog from Pittsburgh likely. He has not started the season particularly great, but he does have a lot of potential here for a home run, so he's definitely worth a look. Looking at Reynolds for Pittsburgh as well, I like him quite a bit. He's priced up a lot, which is a concern, which is a little bit annoying. I'd like him to be in the 4,500 range, but at any rate, he's a viable option today, and he definitely looks like he's going to have some potential, though I wish he was cheaper. Then we'll look at Alvarez for Houston. He just comes in as my favorite home run play in the outfield, and so that's why I'm going to mention him here. But he definitely carries some risk, and it's hard to roster at this price point. And he's not been particularly great so far this season either. McCutcheon is a kind of a he's the third option for the Pirates that will likely start today. If he does draw the start, then he'll be in play. But he's a little bit riskier than the other two, but he definitely draws some good potential here. Looking at some other guys, Barshow for Toronto. He is facing Javier, but I do think he's going to have some home run potential in this one, and so he's definitely worth a look. Lane Thomas, I really do like Lane Thomas a lot this so far this year. He has struggled in his first few games, with the exception of the one where he got a couple of stolen bases, but he does have really good opportunity for a home run today, and so he's definitely in play. Brandon Nemo, Suzuki, and Hop, both from the Cubs, and then Kiermaier and McCormick for Houston and Toronto, respectively, all have some utility. Looking at some value plays here, Taylor for Pittsburgh is somebody that I would look at as a value play. Assuming he gets in to start today, we'll have to wait and see for certain if he does start. But whoever starts in outfield for this team will likely have a lot of upside in this matchup, as this is the most favorable matchup on the slate in general. Eddie Rosario for Washington, also interesting as a value play, and so is Chris Taylor, who can play at shortstop as well. So that's pretty much what I have for the outfielders. Let's look at what we think are probably my home run calls here. Let me pull this up. Let's see here. So we've got Alvarez, Sawinski, and Reynolds being the top overall home run upside guys. Otani's up there too. Toscar Hernandez for the Dodgers. Barshow and M.A. Taylor for Pittsburgh. So yeah, I mean it's a pretty interesting slate. These weather concerns are definitely a concern today. That Detroit New York Mets game is definitely a game that I would avoid fantasy wise for the most part. Colorado has absolutely nothing to go for in this game either, and so I do like the Cubs, but I just didn't like the pitching there. The way they're pitching today is kind of rough for fantasy aspect. And then obviously with Houston and Toronto, they both have some stackability. The Dodgers have a lot of stackability, including their pitching, and then Pittsburgh and Washington both have some good plays in the field. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below.